Welcome to Graded Podcasts.
David Valdes is an American film producer known for working in the Western genre. He started out his career as an assistant director and went on as producer and production manager, frequently collaborating with Clint Eastwood. David received his first Oscar nomination for The Green Mile, starring Tom Hanks. He has since produced many Western films, as well as some science fiction films, the most recent one being Avatar: The Way of Water. David has influenced my drive for success by setting an example in grinding his way to the top of an extremely competitive industry. Welcome, David. Thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. How are you guys?
I'm good, thank you. So to start us off, what was your favorite movie growing up?
My favorite movie growing up? Oh man. Well, there were several. They were usually the Hollywood blockbusters. They were like Ben-Hur. They were Lawrence of Arabia, probably may lead the top one. I mean, even though it was before my time, I love Casablanca. I would say Casablanca is probably my top movie because it's such a, you know, I mean, making a movie is can be very difficult, and everything came when it comes together like it does in Casablanca or even Lawrence of Arabia. It's exciting, and but I like the scope. Casablanca doesn't really have the scope that Ben-Hur or Lawrence of Arabia has. But I like movies that could transport me out of Los Angeles to foreign lands that I wanted to experience. So that was my allure. We would go to the movies at least once a week on the weekends, myself and friends. Before I was a teenager, my mom would drop us off and we would go. In those days, you had two movies. You didn't pay for one movie, but you would get two. You get the A movie and the B movie. And we always liked the B movies because those were like the horror movies and the science fiction movies and the zombie movies and all that, even though I've never made one of those movies. So, yeah, I would put Casablanca and Lawrence of Arabia at the top of my list. And The Magnificent Seven, a Western that I've probably seen 20 times in my life. And I love it.
Are there any movies that have influenced your drive to become the success you are today?
All movies affect me, influence me. I mean, I like, I even when I was at university, I really enjoyed studying foreign film because that was something that was shown here in the States, but it wasn't shown on a regular basis. You would have to seek out a theater, a specialty house is what we call them, and to see an Italian movie or an Israeli movie or whatever movie you were looking for. But at university, actually the first university I went to was the University of British Columbia in Canada. I had an American professor, but she was very big on foreign movies. So she introduced me to kind of a treasure trove of movies I was unfamiliar with. And then when I moved back to Los Angeles and I finished up at UCLA, I took a class in neorealist cinema, which are Italian movies made during and just after World War II. And I found those phenomenal. So those filmmakers like Rossellini and De Sica, and there's a couple of others, Paolo Pasolini. I mean, these are people. I mean, neorealist cinema is extremely unusual because a lot of times they didn't have the resources on how to make a movie. So if the Allies dropped a bomb in Rome and there was smoke and debris and people hurt, a lot of those movies would use that as a backdrop, would use the smoldering building that had just been bombed. Or there's stories of them splicing together 35 millimeter film for a still camera to make enough. You try to get 100-foot or 400-foot load of film so they could film it, and they used real people. They didn't. That's the other sort of trademark of neorealistic cinema. Is that their actors. A lot of the people they used became famous actors. I guess Sophia Loren probably being at the top there, but they started by using regular people and putting them in an unusual situation. So I liked those films a lot. But I like all foreign film. I like a good movie. It's that simple.
I'm going to go back to your early days of your life. Could you tell us a bit about your childhood and how your environment influenced you growing up?
Well, believe it or not, I live in a place called Silver Lake, California, which is a part of Los Angeles. It's kind of very close to downtown here, and I was actually born here. This is my grandmother's house that we're in right now. And I mean, at an early age, at the age of 5, I moved to Orange County, which is probably 20 or 30 miles away. I I was exposed, like I said to you earlier, I enjoyed going to movies, but I never really saw myself as being able to get into the business because when I got into the business, it was sort of a closed shop. You had to have a parent or an uncle or some relative to help you get in the union because in the States, most of the movies are made under the umbrella of a lot of unions. So you can't, it's a catch 22. You can't get a job on a movie unless you have a union card, and you can't get a union card unless you have a job on a movie. So that was a I mean, a lot of people besides myself have had to navigate that weirdness. But so I grew up in Orange County, and then eventually, when I after high school, I was living in Newport Beach and Laguna Beach, and one night my sister came back and she said, "Hey, they're shooting a movie down at the Cove, and they're going to shoot all night." So I just walked down and watched them shoot until the sun came up, and said, "Wow, this is for me. I like this." So I said I was actually enrolled then in a junior college, Orange Coast College in Costa Mesa, and I was taking photography classes, but I didn't really have an emphasis. I didn't have a major. They call it a liberal arts major here, which is basically people like me who were directionless and wanted to just get our solids out of the way, the sciences and the math and the biology and the language requirements, get that out of the way so that when we did graduate from Orange Coast, we could concentrate on the field of our choice. So for me, it was a blessing because that night I went down and watched them film all night. I said, I think I could do this. This is pretty cool, And so that got me interested. And as I said, I went to the University of British Columbia. They in those days when I was in school in the early '70s or mid '70s, I should say, um, they they didn't have film as a separate discipline unto itself. It was all under the umbrella of theater arts. So when I went to British Columbia, I I took theater arts, which meant I had to study theater, directing, theater acting, theater stage design, theater lighting, all of those things. But I look back on it and I find it invaluable because instead of today where people just go and study film, and then when you go make a film and having to deal with an actor can be a trying experience, or as a director, or if even as a producer making a film, you interface with the actors a lot. So understanding their craft, which I learned really at UBC, it's called University of British Columbia. I look back at that and it's gave me a real appreciation for the art of acting, the craft of acting, and also I learned stage design, which in the film world is production design, and except in the theater world, it's much more contained. It's you're on a stage, a proscenium stage, whereas the film world, your frame is as big or as much money as you have. Um, so anyway, when I moved to Vancouver, it was specifically to study film and as much film I could. And after 2 years at that university, I had taken all the classes. There were only like 3 film classes, but like I said earlier, they were a lot of them concentrated. They weren't what I do now, the feature, Hollywood feature films. They were a lot of them because in Canada they do a lot of documentaries. So I took some documentary courses, and then, as I said, I had a lot of foreign films. But it opened my eyes to the possibilities of what we could do in the world of film. And then when I came back to UCLA, I that was really just to get my degree and to button down and meet people, start to establish a network of people, which I still see some of them today. Um, a few of them have become, you know, pretty successful and from our university days at UCLA as actors. And there's even been a couple of directors that came out of it and a few producers.
What are some habits or skills one needs to develop that you would consider essential to becoming successful in the film industry?
Oh, wow. Well, you have the biggest thing as a producer is you just can't take no for an answer because you're going to hear no a lot. It's easy for people to say no. I mean, if they don't like the script you're trying to raise financing for, or you're trying to seduce them into coming to your film to work on it as a cinematographer, production designer, and they don't like a script, well, okay, I get it. I mean, that rarely happens, but what I'm trying to do is illustrate that when somebody says no, there's somebody else there. There's somebody else. If you don't get the financing from one source, there are other sources. That's opened up a lot since the streamers have come into play. For many, many years, most of my career, there were really just 7 places you could shop a project. And that's the usual suspects like Disney or Warner Brothers or Paramount or 20th Century Fox or Universal and 2 others. And now it's a lot better. And even when I was coming up, I mean, you could always do an independent film, which did not require studio funding, with the hopes that you would make a good film and you would sell it to the studio after the fact, after you made it, as they would buy it at a film festival, and they would hopefully pay you a lot more than it costs to make. But I think getting back to your question about the qualities, the biggest thing is don't take no for an answer, and just, I mean, be polite about it, be kind about it, but just go on to the next case. Now, if 10 people tell you no, maybe you should go back and look at the script. Maybe you're trying to sell something that isn't going. If it's not appealing to 10 people in the movie business, maybe it won't appeal to an audience. But that's that. So I guess the characteristics are tenacity, perseverance, determination, ambition, but at the same time, feeling comfortable that your skill set is up to date, up to speed. Because our business right now, for instance, I mean, I don't, have you seen Avatar?
Yes, I have. Long time
Okay.
ago.
I mean, there's a lot of cutting edge stuff in that movie that, I don't even know if I could dream about it 30 years ago, 35 years ago. And so, and there's probably a lot of people who've been in the business my age that just aren't interested in the visual effects world, but I like it. And so staying abreast of all the current technology developments and figuring out how you can utilize that technology in your film. If you're making a Western, you're probably not going to have a lot of visual effects. If you're doing Avatar or Alita Battle Angel, you're going to rely very heavily on your visual effects producer and your visual effects supervisor. So it's not something that you can't, I think it's true of every profession. You have to, the thing that gets you into your line of work is a curiosity. And I think you can't lose that. You have to be constant, even though you may feel good about, hey, I've done 20 movies or whatever you've done. You still have to, like tomorrow or Saturday, we're going to what's called a bake off, where the best visual effects films last year, we hear the teams of people speak on how they achieve certain effects in Top Gun and Avatar, and there's like 3 other movies. And I mean, I'm going to that not to see old friends. I'm going to it to keep abreast of how they got some of those shots in not Avatar, Top Gun, or some of the other animated stuff that's been going on this year. So what I'm saying is you just can't, get lazy and fall back on one success you've had, because there's been a lot of failures too. A lot of, for every really great movie, like let's use Avatar again as an example, that's doing very well at the box office right now. There's a lot of other movies I've made that haven't done very well.
What has been your lowest point, and how did you get from there to where you are now?
My lowest point, uh, my lowest point that I can talk about.
That you can talk about.
I guess I guess I guess the lowest point was a period where it wasn't that long ago. It was about 15 years ago. And it was at a point where I think it was 11 scripts with 11 directors attached, with some cast members attached. And I was going around trying to get them financed, and I couldn't get any of them financed. And, it's just to manage 11 directors, 11 sets of writers, 11 sets of actors and crew members was ominous and daunting. And it was interesting because I mean, this was about a 6-month period of my life. I just couldn't get anything going. And then I got a call from a friend of mine who asked me to go. I had worked with DreamWorks before, and to come back to DreamWorks and do a visual effects movie, which was I Am Number Four. And gladly accepted that, put my 11 projects on the table. And that kind of immersed me in a lot of the visual effects. That was a big, heavy visual effects show. I had to learn a lot in a little amount of time. And, that kind of got me back in the saddle, so to speak.
Other than financial success, what goals do you follow when you actually make a film?
The only thing that every movie I ever have made only has one goal, is try to make the best movie possible. With a script that you have. I mean, when I read a script, I'm sure it's a different experience than when you read the same script. But and each project is different. Sometimes, I had lunch. What was it, Monday of this week, with a director, with actually a friend from UCLA, one of the guys that's been successful making a career out of. He's a television director, and he's got some projects that he's going to bring to me that he wants to direct, but he doesn't have a producer on it. And it's I have to go back to your original question. What was your question?
Other than financial success, what are the goals that you follow when making a film?
Yeah, it's a real simple answer. The goal is to make the best movie possible. And sometimes that means hiring cast or crew that you don't particularly like, but they're the best fit for the movie. Their knowledge or their skill set or their personality or their relationship with the actor or the relationship with the director is important. But ultimately, I've never called in a movie. I can honestly say, whether you like a movie I've made or not, I put the same amount of attention and love and passion into that movie. And then when they fail, because we all have failures, it's just part of life. You have to pick yourself up, get back in the saddle, and then when you taste success with a movie that does well at the box office, or it has a lot of critical appeal, then that makes up for the failures. So you just don't get bogged down in the failures, because failure is a fleeting thing and success is a fleeting thing. Just because Avatar is doing well right now, maybe my next movie will not do so well. So you just have to be prepared for that.
We're discussing success with your movies. What is your personal definition of success?
My personal definition of success, well, it's changed. I have to say, you're asking me to define a word that I think when I was your age or at university, success meant a lot of materialistic things. Being successful in whatever industry you've decided to go into, and then the trappings that come along with that: a nice car, a nice house, uh, flying first class, all those kinds of things. And as I've gotten older, those things are not that interesting to me anymore. So I think success is my current definition of the success would be just being content with what you're doing. I'm very lucky that I like watching movies. I like making movies. I do get irritated when I watch a bad movie, when somebody wastes my time. I don't want to waste anybody's time because it's hard enough to get somebody. A lot of people I have on my desk in there. I have at least three scripts or one book and two scripts from people who've submitted them blindly to me. Um, they never phoned, they never went through my agent, they never said, but obviously I can't get involved with them, and I just don't have the time to get involved in that. But what I'm saying is, it takes a couple of hours minimum to read a screenplay, and in this business, you read a lot of screenplays. So if you're going to ask somebody else to read a script so that they are interested in financing or coming aboard, you got to make sure that the script is in the best possible condition. You can't, handing a script and saying, "Oh, we're going to change the girl's character. She's going to be a lesbian in the next one, and we're going to add a dog in this scene." And you can't do that. You have to. You don't get a second chance to make a first impression. Is what my point is. So success is changed. The definition of that has changed for me right now, and I think part of it too is the process of making a movie. It's like a painter, an artist painting a painting. It's a lot of them enjoy the process more than selling the painting. The painting is a byproduct. The movie is a byproduct of 2 years of work, of gathering, marshaling up a couple of hundred people, or in the case of Avatar, several thousand people, to work towards a common goal. And when that's working, that's the satisfaction that you'll get. And it's especially sweet when you have a movie like Avatar that's doing well at the box office right now.
Have you achieved your success yet?
It's funny. I don't really measure my career or my life in terms of success. Again, it's for me, it's about serenity and tranquility and contentment and keeping the mind active. You asked me earlier about my trip recently to the Amazon. I mean, I doubt if I'd ever gone to the Amazon if we didn't have an anthropologist on Avatar who made it very clear to me that there are not one or two, but lots and lots of indigenous tribes that are disappearing. And so, that kind of being able to walk into a world that's very different than making movies, but is something that's important to the planet. I'm blessed because that's one of the great things. The great things about movie making is that you're interfacing with so many people. You can make a movie. You can make movies all your career here in Los Angeles if you want. I mean, there's a lot of people in the business here. You can, people have made careers here their entire lives many times. But I've always had a bit of wanderlust. I like to get out and I like to travel. I've made a movie in Africa. I like making a movie in Europe. I've made movies in Mexico and South America. I like being exposed to their crews in how they make movies, which we don't have a lock because we live in Hollywood. We don't have a lock that we know how to do it better than anyone else. In fact, conversely, a lot of times when people don't have as many resources as we have here, I think another part of the brain kind of clicks on, and they become a lot more imaginative and innovative. Yeah.
You described going to the Amazon as an amazing experience. How has that impacted you?
How has it impacted me? Well, it's impacted me in that I mean, I know Jim Cameron, who did a lot of research in the Amazon. He I've gone to him recently to ask for a favor, that if we can design some macaw nest, because we have such a great art department, as you saw when you saw Avatar. I mean, these guys are really incredible. We have two production designers and a huge team of in the art department. And when I was down in the Amazon recently, one of the guys was kind of complaining to me what was wrong with why the macaw population is shrinking there, and it's because of predators, really. So right now we're talking about designing and actually building some nests that would be fairly big. They're like 6 feet tall, a couple of meters tall, but would use artificial intelligence to recognize whether it's a macaw trying to get into it or a monkey trying to steal the macaw eggs. So it's affected me in trying to get involved with doing something that will help macaws, will help, and in effect, help the Amazon. I mean, it's, that's a whole other subject. We could do a podcast on that in itself. But I mean, there's a lot of, it's debilitating and depressing when you see illegal mining and dumping of mercury into rivers, and the encroachment of civilization into the jungle areas, and the illegal foresting that's going on down there with people, by people who really don't understand the fragility of the Amazon. And so I think that message needs to get out there. And I'd like to, you asked me how this has impacted what I do now. I think in the future, I've never done a documentary film, but I think it may be in the works in the future, and trying to open people's eyes to what needs to be done. And we can't keep putting it off for another decade. We need to get involved now.
What do you believe the solutions are for those issues?
The solutions for those issues?
Yeah.
What do I think are the solutions to the issues, like in the Amazon? Well, I think first of all, there needs to be a lot of education, because, as I said, actually, putting it, I'll give you a good example. One of our guides had actually, as a teenager, had been an illegal miner, and had been an illegal, he did illegal logging, taking down the forest. And then he realized what his actions were doing. And it's interesting. He turned his life around. He went to school in Lima, I think he said, and he spent 3 years learning about his country, so that now he can take guides. So I think ecotourism is now he's in Peru. He's with a large company down there, but I think a lot of it is, I think we need to support ecotourism. I think we need to educate a lot of the people in those countries. I mean, they're doing it for money. On a good day, somebody in Peru, they told me, could make $80 mining, and that's a lot of money for a lot of those people. So it's going to take money too, because if you're going to take those people out of the workforce and out of destroying the Amazon, you got to give them something to do. It's like in Africa. When I was in Africa, I know that poaching was a big issue, and I was always somewhat appalled when I would go to a reserve and see people, like soldiers walking around the perimeter of a reserve to protect a rhinoceros or an elephant or whatever it was. So I think it's education and money, and waking people's up with, I mean, film is film. I think I got into the film business because it was entertainment, and it was somewhat glamorous to a lot of people, movie stars, red carpets, Hollywood, Klieg lights, all of that. But then when you get into it, you realize there's a bigger responsibility than just to entertain people. You have to pass along, you have to enlighten them as well as educate them. And that might sound a little pompous, but I think I think the power of film and doing the right movie on the Amazon, that if it could reach enough people, would really understand that things have got to change down there. That's just one issue. I mean, every country has their own issues, and you want to, as you get older, you just know that you can you can give them money, or you can try to find money to help them, or you can actively roll up your shirt sleeves and say, okay, let's make a movie that shows the denuding of the Amazon, without it sounding like a lecture, saying without, with that, and sometimes the context that you've developed over a career, that movie's going to have a lot more impact and import if Tom Hanks is the narrator. And so that's always, then you can call in some favors and say, hey, you want to come in and narrate this? So yeah.
You've been filming movies for decades now. How do you know a good idea when you see it?
Yeah, a good idea to me may not be a good idea for you. Um, I mean, it's something that grabs my attention. I mean, sometimes it's not a movie as much as a book or a magazine article, and then you have to. That's a longer process because you have to then develop the magazine article or the book into a screenplay or a play. A lot of plays are now becoming movies, um, but but again, like I said earlier, I think that when years ago, I remember it was earlier than this, but it was around New Year's Eve one year. I made a resolution that I wouldn't fall in love with anything that I couldn't sell. And for some reason, even when I was a young filmmaker, I would always be attracted to stories about older people. When I say people my age now or older, and I just couldn't sell them because everybody is sort of targeting the younger audience, the TikTok audience. Um, so I stopped. It's interesting now on one of those projects. It's resurfaced recently again, but to a movie that stars people in their 70s or 80s is if when you talk to a studio executive, they're going to tell you all the problems with it, that people who are in their 70s or 80s who want to see people their age and identify with them don't go to the movies. They wait for it to come on cable. They don't like the inconvenience of having to go to a cinema or whatever the excuse is. So I've been very careful that when I do lock into an idea that I believe is good and has merit, and should be made into a movie, that I think I can really sell it. Another example is a project about 25 years ago I tried to get about Latino music in San Antonio, Texas, in the early '60s, just before the Beatles came to America. And I worked for 2 years with that director, and we just couldn't get any traction. But now, with the a lot of focus on the importance of diversity and including other people, and especially Latinos who don't see themselves on screen. I know in Cape Town, you probably don't have a big Latino population, but here in Los Angeles, I think we have more Latinos than we have Anglos. It's important for those kids to see imagery that reflects them, their skin color, their brownness. So I think that I have not started looking for money on this project yet, but we've been working on the script. But I'm thinking it's going to finally resonate. So sometimes a good idea might come up at a bad time, and you wait 25 years, and it may be timely again.
I'm going to go back to your childhood. Who were your role models or the people you followed and looked up to during your teenage years?
During my teenage years, I'll tell you one guy who comes to mind, who you've never heard of, a guy named Bill Sands. I remember I went to, not that I'm religious because I'm not, but I did have to go to church every Sunday as a kid. And it was interesting church. It was a non-denominational church. So it didn't matter if you were, Christian, Jewish, whatever, Catholic, you could go there. And the reverend used to bring in like guest speakers. I mean, which is kind of unusual for a church. But there was a guy who was the warden of San Quentin prison. And I remember as a kid listening, and I was probably 10 years old or something, but I remember him saying, anything the mind can conceive, you can achieve. And that's always stayed with me my whole life, which is true. I really believe that we only use a small percentage of our mind for most things. And as we evolve, as the species evolves, we're going to learn a lot of other things. You being able to use more of our brain than we currently do. So I believe it or not, to answer your question, it would be a guy that was the warden at San Quentin prison. I always like that, thinking that if you can think it, you can achieve it, and again, not taking no for an answer when somebody, if you really believe in something and somebody tries to talk you out of it, if you really believe in it and you think, you have to be honest with yourself. If it's, I don't know, let's say if you're trying to make a pornographic movie, that's appealing to a very small market. And I don't know, depending on your ethics, I'm not sure you know, I wouldn't even waste my time in something like that. It doesn't interest me, even if there's a lot of money to be made, it just doesn't interest me. So I'm trying to think of other people. I mean, I liked a lot. When you asked me the question about other people I admired as a teenager, a lot of, for some reason, it wasn't actors as much as directors. So like a Frank Capra movie, or a William Wellman movie, or so I mean, in a case, anything Kirk Douglas did, I used to watch. And I mean, so there were those kind of people. But in terms of today, we just didn't have the internet. We weren't as connected as we are today, where what you're doing right now with making a podcast connects a lot of us to current knowledge, and to new people that we didn't even know were out there. My wife was just telling me about a guy that she listened to this morning on a podcast from Ghana, who is a healer. He puts his hand on somebody in a wheelchair, and that person stands up from the wheelchair and walks away. That intrigues me. That interests me. So I'll probably listen to the podcast later today. And so I can't, I mean, those are the names that come to mind right now. I can't say that I had a dad or a mom or somebody like that influenced me a lot, or a relative. I did have an uncle that was always very accepting of what I wanted to do. So I appreciated that. But I mean, the power of the movie screen, the silver screen, were the directors to me, and the producers, and I still like to see their names. So I think there's some wonderful movies made, again, before my time, in the 40s, the 30s, but those kind of movies that I used to watch on television all the time.
Is there any advice you would give to those hoping to pursue a career in producing?
Well, what I said earlier, the advice I would give is, don't take no for an answer, and be determined and persistent, and love what you do. If you got to be honest with yourself. If everything you're doing is a pain in the ass, and you don't like the people you're working with, then you shouldn't be in that line of business. The one thing about the film business is that it's excruciatingly long hours. I mean, you've always heard our average day is a 12-hour day, so that's a 60-hour work week. And there are people here who are trying to reduce the 40-hour traditional work week down to 32 hours or something. I mean, that's never going to happen in the movie business. It just because when something's hot, you have to produce the content while the moment is right in the zeitgeist. So you're always going to be working long hours, and your weekends are not going to be sacrosanct. You're going to be called or nowadays text or emailed on the weekends. And so when you're launching a film, it's a 7 day a week, 12 or 14 hour a day gig, and your personal life kind of goes into shambles because you can't devote the time to your personal. You can't be married to two wives. You have to pick which one you're going to do, and in order to get them, once you get the funding for the movie, you got to get the movie off the ground.
How do you stay motivated?
How do I stay motivated? Well, I love what I do, I guess. I mean, I'm like I said I earlier about the curiosity. I'm always curious, and I mean, listen, I did movies with Clint Eastwood for a long time. I did 17 or 18 movies with him, and that was great. It was a great period of my life. I'm very grateful for it, and very grateful for him. But I wanted to make other kinds of movies than just movies that starred Clint. And so, that's when I started branching off, and I had enough confidence in my 40s that I could branch off and make other movies. I think the big thing that keeps me motivated are good ideas, new scripts, new characters, or some kinds of even stunt casting. If you put the Rock in a musical, for instance. I mean, that sounds incongruous, but that's kind of cool to me. I don't know if he can sing, but it's something, I just don't want to follow sort of a little list of, there's these boxes, because on this movie, we did all of these things this way. We're going to do the same thing on this movie, and it'll go smoother, and it'll be less expensive, and it'll be better. That doesn't really intrigue me. Every movie's unique unto itself.
What movie have you enjoyed filming the most?
The Green Mile.
Green Mile.
Yeah.
I'm gonna switch the discussion more to Avatar. The first Avatar movie premiered over a decade ago. What were the key challenges in making The Way of Water?
Well, the key challenges for me, because I really had to oversee the budget, was to trying to do the movie for what the studio wanted to make it for, and we were not successful in that. But we are now enjoying that success because I think the movie will make money. So just because we were doing things that haven't been done before. So when they haven't been done before, you can't go to a rental house, or you can't go to somebody's garage and pull out a piece of equipment that you may need, because the piece of equipment you need, you have to design in order to get the shot that you want. For instance, all the tank work on that show, we had to build a huge tank that filled an entire sound stage. I can't remember the dimensions right now, but it was 20 feet tall, and it was like 60 or 80 feet long, and it was 40 feet wide, and we had to fill it with water where the actors could, and then the actors, you saw the movie, you said, so you've seen how much underwater work there is. The actors had to learn how to hold their breath for 5 to 7 minutes, which sounds impossible, but it's not. I've seen the actors go through. We had a specialist that knows how to free dive. We had specialists for everything on that movie, and so, and that's when you ask about motivating too. It's always great to do a movie where you are breaking new ground and you're exposed to people. Like I said, this guy, his name was Kirk Crack from Canada, and his specialty is free diving, and he can do dives for up to 10 minutes with no breath of air. And he's developed a system that he can teach this to others, and our actors had to go through that. So at one point, Kate Winslet held her breath for 7.5 minutes. That's pretty astonishing. That's something that's above and beyond the Call of Duty for a normal actor. So that was, the water of it all. You say, what was the biggest challenge? Well, the water of it all. Water is something, it's one of those taboos in the film business. If you want to shoot something on water, just add 20% to the budget and add double the number of days you think it's going to take, because working on water just takes much longer than even realistic thinking. Optimistic thinking is out the window, but if you just say it's going to take 5 days because we'll be on the ocean and it's not that difficult. Well, you know what? A storm could come up, the waves could be bad, the boat could sink. There's a million things that go wrong on the water. So I would think the biggest the biggest not obstacle, but just hurdle to get over was to building this tank. I mean, I felt like I was an engineer for 6 months of that, because every day I would just have meetings on the tank. You can imagine the pressure of a tank, and we're movie people. We're not used to building big tanks, but we found the people that do, and they gave us a lot of sage advice, and we got all of that work done.
You've been involved in so many highly successful movies. What do you do after a big success?
I can't say that I fly off to Tahiti for 2 weeks and enjoy R&R. Because as I said earlier, the success is fleeting. The next one could be, usually when a movie's in post, I'm reading during the production of a movie. It's very difficult to read anything other than material or documents relating to that specific movie. When you get into post, you have a little more time because it's a long process. In Avatar, it's about a 2-year process just for post production. So you start looking and feeling what's interests you. Like I said, what do I do? I just went to the Amazon. If you'd asked me before I did Avatar, would I ever be in the Amazon? I don't know. I don't think so. But it motivated me to go, and it'll motivate us to go back.
And how do you maintain your success after you've achieved it?
I don't maintain my success after I achieve it. I mean, I do the best job I can on the movie and hope that everybody that's hired on the movie does their best job, and then we put it out there to the universe. And if it has traction, people, Avatar clearly resonates with a lot of people. It's the #1 movie in a lot of countries, India and Germany, I think, ever. So, it does what movies can do. It can transcend generational, national, religious boundaries. You don't have to be a Catholic gay kid to like this movie. It's cutting across all of those little separate boxes that the marketing guys and the distribution guys are always trying to target. And that's what you want, or I want anyway, is you don't want to make a movie and just or a podcast like you're doing, and then all of a sudden it ends up in oblivion. It's going to take a lot of work and time, and so and it's complicated because just making a movie is complicated enough. But once you finish the movie, you have to have, it's like any product. It's like, Stephen Jobs, when he made his first Apple computer, it can be better than an IBM computer to a select group of people, but you need people, a marketing team that can take it out there and make a cool logo or a big marketing campaign on how. I'm not sure if you're aware, but on Avatar, for instance, we lit up the Venice canals in Italy. We've taken huge billboards. I mean, like I saw one on Sunset 2 days ago. It's got to be 60 feet by 40 feet. I mean, it's massive. Niagara Falls, we turned it blue for a night. So those kind of stunts, marketing stunts, really got a lot of attention before the movie was released. It got everybody hopefully in a state of anticipation and readiness to see it. So but I get to the point, maybe there are other producers, but I get to the point where once I release it and I take my hands off, it's a done deal. It's that sort of byproduct of all the work that we put into it for the previous 2 or 3 years. Or in the case of Avatar, excuse me for interrupting, but in the case of Avatar, a lot of people who were on the Way of Water had never left after Avatar 1. So not a lot, but 8 or 10 people have been on it. We're on it for the 10 intervening years, just trying to find out the newest camera, the newest optics, and whatever their department was, or obviously the writers, just or with the technology, the expanding the way it is. For storage, something as simple as data storage suddenly becomes a new issue that I never had to worry about 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So anyway, I'm sorry for interrupting.
All good. Unfortunately, running out of time here. So I just want to finish off with one question. If you could go back and say one thing to your 16-year-old self, what would it be?
It would be probably just follow your heart. Follow your heart and really try to be honest with yourself on what you want to do in life, and then pursue it with a vengeance. And don't do things that are safe. Don't if everybody goes on the same path, walking straight, maybe take a right turn and a left turn. And if everybody walking straight looks at you in disgust, don't worry too much about what other people think. If you really feel, if you have a strong instinct to go into a certain profession or to exploit a certain idea, because so many of us, especially teenagers, want to feel belonged within their peer group. They don't, and the weird ones, the nerdy ones, geeky ones, are often shunned by the cool ones. But it's okay to be geeky, and it's okay to be cool.
Thank you so much for joining me today, David. And I truly believe you inspired me and many other teenagers across the globe.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.